I'm going to share with you how to can pears at home using this old-fashioned trick that I actually found in a really old 1920s book on how to peel pears without using a knife. Spoiler alert, it's by blanching them. So very similar if you've ever had to blanch tomatoes to peel them and or peaches. But the great thing is when you blanch the pears, the skins just come right off. And what I love about canning pears is unlike apples, I don't have to use a knife in order to core them. So it just makes the process go a lot faster. So we're first up gonna have our pot of boiling water, and you're going to take your pears and put enough in there just for a single layer. And we're gonna put those in the boiling water for just about 30 to 60 seconds. So we've got our pears in the boiling water. We're gonna blanch them, check it at 15 seconds, and if you need to go a little bit longer than that, sometimes up to 30 seconds. We're gonna grab our first one here. Oh, perfect. And you can see immediately the skins just start to come off. Now, a lot of times with blanching, they will tell you to put it in ice cold water. We're not really worried about stopping the cooking process. One, they haven't really been in the hot water long enough to worry about that. We're just concerned with getting them cool enough that I can actually handle them to finish the final removal of all the peels. So now we've got all of our pears blanched, and while those are cooling off and we're getting ready to peel them, we want to get our simple syrup going. Now, you've got lots of options when you're making your syrup. You can do it really light with just a small amount of sugar. You can use honey. You can also use fruit juice concentrate, and you can also use just plain water. If you're using honey or a low sugar, which is considered a light syrup, the benefit to that is it's going to help retain some of the color while your pears, once they're all processed in the jars and are sitting on the shelf. But safety-wise, you don't have to use any sugar. If you are gonna use honey, I recommend not using raw honey because the heat of processing our jars will destroy the benefits of raw honey, and raw honey is often expensive. So I don't use honey when I'm doing canning just for those reasons. I use sugar, which this video is sponsored by Azure Standard. So I get all of my sugar from them. This is just organic evaporated cane juice or cane sugar. What's great about that is it still has some of the molasses in there. It's not been bleached, so it's pretty light colored. It's not like what you would call brown sugar. And I get it from my bags here. I usually buy it in bulk. That was a 5-pound bag, but I also get it in 25-pound bags, and then I transfer it to the canister that I'm just using in the kitchen. So I have on my website a full written tutorial with the amounts of honey that you would use, the different amounts of sugar that you would use in the water to create the syrup. So we're doing 6-quart jars today. And so I have in the syrup, I've already added 2 cups. We're doing 2 1/4 cups of sugar. It's almost 8 cups of water here, or actually 9. I had to do the math because we decided to do more. I usually will do like 4 quarts, but with the steam canner, I can fit quite a few quarts in there. So we're gonna do 6 today. So you wanna just get this going. We're gonna put it on low. We just wanna start to bring this to a simmer while we are prepping the rest of our pears. So this is not necessary, it's purely for just looks, but I like to add 1/4 cup of concentrated lemon juice to a big bowl of just cool water, because as I get my pears peeled and cored, I'm gonna put them in this water, and that just helps keep them from browning while we're working on the rest of them before we have all of them ready and begin to jar them up. So like I said, this is not a safety standard or anything like that, purely for aesthetics. So we've got our pears here that we have blanched. So you can see, look at this. You can see what, you don't even need a knife. We're just going to take, it just comes right off. So you're basically just peeling off the skins here. Now, an interesting thing about pears is pears actually ripen from the inside out. So when you go to pick pears or you get pears from a farm, which is where I got mine this year from a farm, is they're gonna look really green, and they're gonna feel very, very firm. Because if you pick them and they're ripe and soft on the tree, they're actually gonna be rotten on the inside because of the way that they ripen. So just let them sit out at room temperature for a couple of days, and they'll start to slowly turn yellow, and then they'll start to feel a little bit soft to the touch, and that's how you know that they're actually ripe and ready to go. Now, to peel a pear, the actually only time you need a knife in this whole process is just to cut it in half. So you can take where you've got the stem side here, and we're just gonna pull that off and down. And then you're just gonna simply take a spoon and just go right in there and just scoop out where you've got the core and the seeds. See? Easy peasy. You don't even need to use a knife for that part. And the same side on this. We're just gonna go in, get that part out. Now you can do slices if you choose on your pears, or you can just can them halved. And I love pears. One slice is never enough for me, so I always can my pears in halves. So we're just gonna go ahead, put them in our lemon water, and move on to the next one. Now, oftentimes people ask, what are the best types of pears for preserving, or the best variety of pears to can? And really any except Asian pears. If you are using Asian pears, they are not as acidic. And so you do have to make sure that you are adding lemon juice actually to your syrup and to the jars. It's a very specific amount. In order to ensure that the pH level is acidic enough that you don't have any concerns for botulism or safety. Aside from Asian pears though, you can use any, but my favorite is Bartlett. I feel like Bartletts are an excellent canning pear, and they're one of my absolute favorites. So we're gonna bring our syrup just to a simmer. It's getting close. So we've got our jars freshly washed and rinsed in hot water. So we have those sitting here. And then I've got my canning lids. They have been washed as well. So these are the Superb canning lids, which you can get through Azure Standard right now, who has sponsored our video. And through October 31st of 2022, Azure is offering a 10% off to any first-time customer with a $50 minimum order. And they've got the wide mouth lids that are in this box, as well as the narrow mouth. And coupon code, which we'll have beneath the video, is MKN10 for 10% off first-time orders. So you'll get all those details there. So one of the things that I like to do, completely optional, but let me tell you, it is delicious, is add some cinnamon sticks to each individual jar. So you can do 2 4-inch cinnamon sticks, and Azure has cinnamon sticks as well, per quart jar. So I just put those at the bottom of each of my jars. Oh, it smells so good. I wish you guys could smell this. It already smells like fall. So this is basically a cinnamon or spiced pear recipe. And I'm gonna do all of the jars on this run with the cinnamon sticks. So you wanna bring your syrup to just below a boil. So we're just getting this to a simmer. And then we are going to put our prepared pears into our syrup. And ideally you're just gonna do about a single layer. And we're just doing this long enough for the pears to warm all the way through. So approximately 5 minutes or so. Now this is considered a hot pack. And the reason that I like to hot pack my pears, you can do pears in a raw pack. However, if you are canning them in just water, you should use the hot pack method. But pears, just like peaches, tomatoes, and even apples, they have a lot of oxygen trapped inside the fruit. So if you do a hot pack, that helps to push some of the oxygen out of the fruit. And it actually means you're gonna be able to pack more pears per jar, which is lovely. So I can fit more fruit inside of a jar. And it can also help reduce siphoning issues as well. So siphoning is when you have filled your jars to the appropriate headspace, you've put them in your canner, and when you pull it out, there's a lot of liquid loss. That is siphoning. And so this can help with that as well. Now, these are pears are acidic, as we already went over, unless you have Asian pears, and therefore you're gonna add more acidity. But these can safely be canned via a water bath or the steam canner. Steam canners can be used in place of water bath recipes just fine. They are approved. And could you pressure can pears? This is a question that I've had asked. You technically can pressure can fruit, but you're going to pressure can fruit at 5 pounds of pressure instead of the 10 pounds of pressure that we can our vegetables and meats at. Unless, of course, you are 1,001 feet above sea level or higher, then you're gonna be pressure canning to 15 pounds of pressure. You have to adjust for your altitude. So I don't pressure can my fruit just because even at the 5 pounds of pressure for my altitude, I'm beneath that. We're at about, I think 600 feet above sea level here. It's really easy to over can them when you're pressure canning them, even at that 5 pounds of pressure, and then they're just gonna be mushier. And they're already going to be cooked, processing in the water bath and the steam canner. And so I prefer to just use those methods and not pressure can them, though you technically can pressure can them. So this has been close to about 5 minutes. And just keep an eye on this because it is a light sugar syrup recipe, but you can scorch it. So we just want to make sure that we're not getting too hard of a boil there. And I also don't really want to evaporate out any of my syrup by letting it be at a really hard boil because I need that to fill my jars. So once these are ready, we're just gonna take those out. Of course, it's hot. And we're gonna put them into our jars. So I always do my fruit in wide mouth jars just because it's gonna be really hard to pack these into the regular mouth. So we're gonna go ahead and get those in there. And I find it easier, I can get more pears and or peaches per jar if I pack them in there cut side down. So when you're getting to the top of the jar, one of the things that I like to look for is picking some of the smaller pears because you're gonna have varying sizes and putting those in the top if I think I'm getting close. So we're gonna be doing these to a 1/2 inch. So we're actually gonna go up quite a ways. So I'll put one more large one in this jar and then I'll put a smaller one on the very top. And you can kind of use I've got my headspace measuring tool and my bubble popper here and kind of get that down in there. There we go. So we've got plenty of space here for our syrup with maintaining that headspace. So now I'm just gonna take some of this syrup with a funnel because I make a mess. And we're gonna go ahead and ladle that. And now, because we've got quite a bit of fruit in here, we want to make sure that we're removing, so you can see all those bubbles coming up. So we're going to run this around the outside, make sure we're getting all of those air bubbles out. And then we're going to double check our headspace again. So because of the fruit going down by getting some of those air bubbles out, I am not at a 1/2 inch headspace anymore. So I'm just going to top that off. Perfect. There we go. And now you can see we definitely need to clean this rim. We're gonna put our lid on there, and then remember we're only gonna do this to fingertip tight to avoid buckling our lids. And if you want more explanation on that, you can catch the video that I've done on that. Into our prepared steam canner. So we have this because this is a hot pack, we've preheated this to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. And now we need to top off our next jar. When I get to the last two, that's when I start to fill partially each of them, about halfway with the last of the syrup that I have. In case I run short, I've actually got back here boiling the water that I had the pears in with the lemon juice, because it's been infused a little bit with the pears as they were sitting in there. And because it's safe to hot pack pears with just water, then it's totally fine if I need to top it off with some extra boiling liquid and using the water versus this actual syrup. But I think I'm gonna have just enough, but I always have a little bit boiling just as a backup in case I need it in order to maintain headspace on the last few jars. So now we are going to put the cover on our steam canner here and get that brought up to processing time temperature. And once this is at enough steam, which is, if you're ever gonna use a steam canner, you wanna make sure that you get the kind that has the little dial knob up here. Now, it's not like a pressure canner where you need to have this taken to your local county extension office and calibrated and tested every year, but it just is going to show you when the inside temperature has built up enough steam to be that of boiling water, and then you start your processing time. So for quarts for pears, it's 25 minutes processing time, and if you are 1,001 feet above sea level, then you are going to increase your processing time. So with pressure canning, we increase pounds of pressure, but when we're water bath or steam canning, we're increasing that merely by the minutes that we're processing. So for your altitude and exactly how much that is, you can go to the blog post that I have beneath, well, the link beneath this video, that has this whole recipe written out for you with the steps, all the processing times, including adjusting for your altitude. And you'll also see there where you can grab a copy of my book, Everything Worth Preserving, that has all of my preserving recipes, including canning, but also the other methods that you can preserve your fruit so that you have a full pantry of food to eat from year-round. So if you have any leftover syrup, this is fine to put in the fridge, and you can store the syrup in the fridge for up to a week to use if you're gonna do batches later. Of course, you're just gonna have to add more sugar and water and bring that back up to a boil, but that's completely fine to do. So with our steam canner, one of the differences with steam canning versus water bath canning is as soon as your water bath canning processing time is done, you turn off the heat, remove the lid, and you wait 5 minutes so you don't have thermal shock, but then you can take your jars out. However, with a steam canner, once your processing time is up, you're gonna turn your burner off, but you leave the lid on for an additional 5 minutes. And that's actually part of the processing time with a steam canner. So just a few little details there that are different. So we've let this sit the additional 5 minutes. And you can see all of our jars here. And you can oftentimes see, when I just took that lid off, that there's still boiling liquid inside. And you can kind of hear it a little bit. So I'm gonna let these jars sit without moving them for about 5 minutes, and then I'll go ahead and move these to the towel. So now we're just gonna remove these to a towel that's been folded over in thirds. And then we're gonna let these sit undisturbed for 24 hours, and then we'll check the seals, and they will go on the shelf back in the pantry to enjoy all throughout the winter months. And if you want more on canning and putting up the fall fruits, you're gonna wanna make sure that you grab my recipe and video on how to make homemade apple pie filling that you can in a jar. So you can go and catch that right here.